There's a letter I've been writing in my head for years. It starts with "Dear Me" and ends with an apology I'm not sure I'll ever fully mean. Because how do you apologize to yourself for the ways you let other people break you? How do you say sorry for all the times you stayed when you should have left, smiled when you should have screamed, forgave when you should have walked away? I'm sorry I let them hurt you. 5 words that carry the weight of every bad decision, every ignored red flag, every moment you chose their comfort over your own safety. 5 words that acknowledge the most painful truth of all. Sometimes the person who hurt you most wasn't them. It was you. Because you let it happen. You opened the door. You stayed in the room. You believed the lies even when the truth was screaming in your face. This isn't about blaming yourself, but it is about taking responsibility. And there's a difference, a crucial, painful, necessary difference between the two. Let me tell you about the first time I abandoned myself. I was 16. There was a person who made me feel special one day and invisible the next. They'd text me paragraphs at midnight, then ignore me for a week. And every time they came back, I was there, waiting, like a dog who doesn't understand why its owner keeps leaving. My friends told me to stop. My gut told me to stop. That quiet voice inside, the one that knows things before your brain catches up, that voice was screaming. But I didn't listen. Because I wanted to be chosen more than I wanted to be safe. I wanted to be loved more than I wanted to be whole. So I ignored every warning sign. I made excuses. I convinced myself that if I just tried harder, loved better, asked for less, they'd finally see my worth. They never did. But here's what I didn't realize then. By staying, I was teaching myself a lesson. I was training my nervous system to accept crumbs and call it a feast. I was programming my heart to believe that love is supposed to hurt, that affection is supposed to be earned, that my needs are supposed to come last. I was building a blueprint for every relationship that would follow. And that blueprint said, you are not worth protecting. We live in a culture that celebrates self-sacrifice, especially for women. We're taught that being understanding means accepting behavior that hurts us. That being patient means waiting forever for someone to change. That being loving means putting everyone else's needs before our own. We're praised for staying. We're called loyal, committed, forgiving. We're told we're strong for enduring, for giving second chances, for seeing the good in people even when they're showing us their worst. But here's what nobody tells you. There's a difference between compassion and self-abandonment, between forgiveness and doormat syndrome, between seeing someone's potential and ignoring their reality. When you prioritize someone else's feelings over your own safety, that's not love, that's self-betrayal. When you make yourself smaller so they can feel bigger, that's not kindness, that's erasure. When you silence your own pain because you don't want to seem difficult or demanding or too much, you're not being understanding, you're disappearing. And every time you disappear for someone else, a part of you dies. The part that knows what you deserve. The part that remembers what your boundaries used to be. The part that once believed you were worth showing up for. So here it is, the letter I've been writing. The words I need to say to the version of myself who thought love meant suffering, who confused intensity with intimacy, who gave everything away and called it generosity. Dear me, I'm sorry I didn't protect you. I'm sorry I let people treat you like you were optional, replaceable, convenient. I'm sorry I believed them when they said you were too sensitive, too emotional, too much. I'm sorry I made you small to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. I'm sorry I ignored your gut. Every time it whispered something's wrong, and I told it to be quiet. Every time it screamed leave, and I said just one more chance. I'm sorry I chose their promises over your intuition. Your intuition was always right. I should have listened. I'm sorry I let you believe you had to earn love, that you had to prove your worth, that you had to perform and perfect and please just to deserve basic respect. You never had to earn it. You were always worthy. I just couldn't see it yet. I'm sorry for all the times I chose peace over honesty, for all the times I swallowed your words because speaking them might cause conflict, For all the times I let things slide that should have been deal breakers. I taught you that your voice didn't matter, that your feelings were negotiable, that your pain was less important than someone else's comfort. I'm sorry I stayed too long. In relationships that drained you, in friendships that were one-sided, in jobs that crushed your spirit, in rooms where nobody asked how you were doing. I kept telling you it would get better, that they would change, that you just needed to be more patient. But you were never the problem. The staying was. I'm sorry I didn't leave sooner. Here's something fascinating. Research shows that the pain of social rejection activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. Your brain literally processes emotional hurt the same way it processes a broken arm. But here's the twist. When you abandon yourself, when you ignore your own needs and boundaries to please someone else, your brain experiences that as a double injury. You're being hurt by them and by yourself simultaneously. Psychologists call this internal fragmentation. It's what happens when your actions don't align with your values. When you know something is wrong, but do it anyway. When you betray yourself to avoid being betrayed by someone else, even though the math never works out in your favor. And the more you do it, the more normal it becomes. Your baseline shifts. You start thinking that love is supposed to feel anxious, that relationships are supposed to require constant effort. That happiness is something you have to work for, instead of something you're allowed to feel. This is how trauma becomes your comfort zone. This is how dysfunction becomes familiar. This is how you end up in the same painful patterns over and over, wondering why you keep attracting the same type of person, when really you're not attracting them, you're allowing them. Because your boundaries have become so blurred, you can't tell where you end and they begin. The good news is this: awareness is the first step toward change. You can't fix what you can't see. And if you're reading this, if these words are landing in your chest like stones, that means you're starting to see. You're starting to recognize the pattern. You're starting to understand that self-love isn't selfish, it's survival. Breaking the pattern doesn't mean becoming cold or guarded or building walls so high nobody can reach you. It means becoming discerning. It means learning to distinguish between people who deserve access to you and people who are just using you as a doormat. It means practicing something radical, putting yourself first. Not in an arrogant, self-centered way, but in a my needs matter too way, in a I deserve the same energy I give way, in a I'm not responsible for managing everyone else's emotions way. It means learning to say no without explanation, to set boundaries without guilt, to walk away without closure, to choose your peace over their presence. And here's the hardest part. It means forgiving yourself. For all the times you didn't know better, for all the mistakes you made while you were learning, for all the ways you hurt yourself trying to love someone else. You did the best you could with the tools you had. Now you have better tools. Now you know more. Now you get to choose differently. So here's the second part of the letter, the part that comes after the apology, the part that's harder to write because it requires believing in a future you're not sure exists yet. Dear me, I promise I'll do better. I promise I'll listen when you speak. I promise I'll honor your gut, your boundaries, your needs. I promise I'll stop making you compete for love that should be freely given. I promise I'll stop accepting crumbs and calling it enough. I promise I'll choose you. Even when it's uncomfortable, even when it costs me relationships that were never real to begin with, even when people call me selfish for having standards, even when I'm scared of being alone. I promise I'll protect you the way I should have all along. I'll be the person you needed when nobody else showed up. I'll be the voice that says, you deserve better, instead of just give them one more chance. I promise I'll love you the way you've been loving everyone else, unconditionally, fiercely, without keeping score. And most importantly, I promise I'll never abandon you again. Not for anyone, not for anything, not even for the promise of love. Because the only love that matters is the one you give yourself. Everything else is just decoration. Here's what they don't tell you about self-love. It's not bubble baths and affirmations. It's not spa days and treat yourself culture. Real self-love is looking at the ways you've hurt yourself and choosing to stop. It's setting boundaries that disappoint people. It's walking away from what's familiar because it's killing you. It's choosing the hard right over the easy wrong, over and over until it becomes second nature. Self-love is apologizing to yourself for all the times you weren't your own best friend, and then becoming that friend. Showing up, keeping promises, protecting your peace like it's sacred. Because it is. You are not responsible for everyone who hurt you, but you are responsible for what you do next. You can't change the past, you can't undo the damage, but you can stop adding to it. You can draw a line in the sand and say, not anymore, not me, not again. Dear me, I'm sorry I let them hurt you, but I promise, from this moment forward, I'll be the one who keeps you safe. And that's not just an apology, that's a vow.